Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, one word, all caps, will get you 10% off orders of $10 or more at Flipside Gaming, Original Magic Art, and orders of singles at Multizone. If they don't have what you're looking for, you could check out TCG Player and use my affiliate link to help support the channel. Looking for a way to bling out your deck and not spend a fortune? Alter Sleeves can help with that, and you can help with the channel at the same time by using my affiliate link. Or, if you're looking to join the Goblin Gang, you can always support me through Patreon. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game is another Jersey special, with me playing my Titania deck for one of the first times. I've got 3 snow-covered forests, Fyndhorn Elves, Harrow, Exploration, and Terastodon. Trevor is playing his Elesh Norn deck, keeping Swords to Plowshares, 2 Plains, Monastery Mentor, Seagate Wreckage, and Mindstone. Mike is playing his Aurelia deck, keeping a Mountain, a Plains, Darksteel Citadel, Reliquary Tower, Recruiter of the Guard, and Coalition Relic. Last but not least, Matt is playing his Xenagos deck, keeping a Shaman of Forgotten Ways, Bane of Progress, Thunderfoot Baloth, Exploration, 2 Forests, and a Mountain. Mike wins the die roll and starts us off. Mike plays a Mountain, passing. Matt plays a Forest and casts Exploration. He plays a Mountain as a second land for turn and passes. I play a snow-covered forest and follow Matt's lead, casting my own Exploration and playing another snow-covered forest. I then tap that forest for a green to cast Fyndhorn Elves, passing. Trevor draws and does what White does, playing a Plains and passing turn. Mike draws and also plays a Plains. Matt plays a forest after drawing for turn, and he pays 3 mana for Shaman of Forgotten Ways. I untap and draw, playing a snow-covered forest. 3 mana gets me a Kadama's Reach, finding me a snow-covered forest for the field and 1 from my hand. I play the 1 from my hand after shuffling and then pass to Trevor. Trevor plays a Plains and casts Mindstone. Mike drops a Darksteel Citadel and taps out to cast Recruiter of the Guard. This lets him tutor for a creature card with 2 toughness or less, and he reveals putting to hand a Karmic Guide and passes to Matt. Matt's turn is very fast as he draws, and then taps out completely to cast his commander, Xenagos, and passes. My turn is very similar, with my casting Titania, who sadly enters and has no land to bring back from my graveyard. I then go to combat, hitting Matt for 1 with my Fyndhorn Elves. Trevor drops an Arch of Araska for his land for turn, and pays 3 mana for a Monastery Mentor. He then passes to Mike. Mike drops another Mountain in his main phase, and casts a Stranglehold to shut off any tutors that might be coming in future turns. Matt draws, and seems to be lacking lands. He does have some dorks to help with that, playing out Elvish Mystic, and then the Llanowar Elves, or as Mike calls them, the old 1-2. He puts the Xenagos pump onto one of his elves to indicate he has no desire to attack anyone, and passes turn. I draw, playing another snow-covered forest, which I guess is better than a fetch land right now with Mike's Stranglehold out. I cast Myth Unbounded in my main phase, and Mike wants to double check what it does. I then go to combat, swinging Titania at Mike, who blocks with Recruiter of the Guard. Trevor plays a Plains and casts a Conqueror's Galleon, and then goes to combat. He hits me with the Mentor, and passes to Mike. Mike draws, and casts his Coalition Relic, and then taps his last Plains for an Expedition map, passing. Matt draws and still can't find a land, but he is able to tap a lot of his mana dorks and 2 lands to cast a Bane of Progress. With the ability of the Bane hitting the stack as it enters, the rest of the artifacts and enchantments are then blown up, with the Bane gaining 7 +1/+1 counters. Matt then heads to combat, putting the Xenagos trigger onto his Bane of Progress and doubling its power and toughness basically. He then swings it at me. I for some reason think it has trample, which Trevor nicely points out it doesn't, so I just jump with the Fyndhorn Elves. I untap and draw, playing a Dryad Arbor and passing turn. Trevor drops an Emeria the Sky Ruin, which comes in tapped. He casts a Luminarch Ascension, getting a Monk token from his Mentor, before passing to Mike. Mike draws and drops his Impact Tremors, passing. At the end of turn, Trevor gets a counter on his Ascension. Matt draws and pays 3 for his copy of Kadama's Reach in his main phase, and I use Harrow to do kind of the same. He finds a tapped mountain for the field and a forest to his hand, playing the forest while I find 2 basics to the field, plus get a 5/3 elemental from Titania, seeing the land go to my graveyard. Matt then puts the pump once more onto his Bane of Progress and swings it at me. I block with the Dryad Arbor, gaining another 5/3 elemental token as another land goes to my yard with Titania seeing it. Matt then passes, while Trevor gains another counter on his Ascension. For my turn, I untap and draw, paying 3 mana for an Eternal Witness, who enters and returns to hand my copy of Harrow. I then swing Titania at Mike, since Matt and Trevor can easily chump, and I deal 5 as she connects. I then pass, and Trevor gains another counter onto his Ascension. Trevor plays a Seagate Wreckage as his land for turn, and he has City's Blessing active. He taps enough mana for Fell the Mighty, targeting the Monastery Monk. He resolves his Monk trigger first, getting a Monk token, and then the Prowess trigger before wiping the board. This basically only hurts Matt and myself. Heading to combat, Trevor swings the Monastery Mentor at me, who I block with my Witness. Mike untaps and draws, playing Exotic Orchard. He taps 5 mana for a Karmic Guide that we knew he had in hand, and it enters, dealing 1 with the Tremors. Mike then gets to return something with the Karmic Guide, bringing back the Guard, and dealing another 1 to us with the Tremors, before going to tutor for a creature card with a specific toughness of 2 or less. He reveals Kiki Jiki, putting it to hand, and passes to Matt. Matt draws, and plays a Tyrant's Familiar in his main phase, using lands and his Shaman to cast it. Matt announces he would like to move to his combat step, and before leaving the main phase, Trevor tries to parlay. Matt assures Trevor that he's going to go at Mike now that Mike has revealed a Kiki Jiki, and Trevor agrees that this is a problem. Matt then puts the Xenagos pump onto the dragon, and swings it at Mike. This triggers the Tyrant, allowing Matt to deal 7 to Mike's Karmic Guide, and thus freeing the way for the dragon to deal a full 14 to Mike. Matt then passes, and at the end of turn, I use Harrow to find more basics after sacrificing 1, and Trevor adds his final counter to the Ascension. I draw for turn and cast Terry the Terastodon. I target the only threats that I can that aren't creatures, hitting the Ascension and the Impact Tremors, giving Trevor and Mike each an elephant as those permanents are destroyed. I then pass to Trevor. Trevor draws and counts up his mana. He plays Mentor of the Meek and passes to Mike. Mike sadly just draws and passes. Matt taps his mana dorks and 2 lands for Soul of New Phyrexia. He goes to combat, putting the trigger on the soul from Xenagos, and swings it at me and the Tyrant at Mike. With the Tyrant swinging, Matt has it deal 7 to the Recruiter of the Guard, and we then move to blocks with Terry the Terastodon taking 1 for the team, which still lets some damage through, and Mike takes the full hit. Matt then passes to me. My turn has me drawing and simply passing. Trevor's turn has him tapping 2 for a Pearl Medallion, getting a Monk token from the Monastery Mentor. This triggers the Mentor of the Meek as it comes in, and Trevor pays the draw from it. He also gets a Prowess triggers for his Monk tokens and Monastery Mentor, and once the medallion is finished, he taps only 1 for Declaration in Stone, exiling the Soul of New Phyrexia and all the targets that share the same name, while giving Matt simultaneously a Clue token. This gives him another Prowess trigger, and he gets another Monk token, and heads to combat. He swings his tokens that can, plus the Monastery Mentor at me for 16, which I take. He then passes to Mike. Mike plays a Grixis Panorama, and activates its ability, sacrificing it to go and find a mountain. He then passes, and at the end of turn, Matt pays enough to activate his Clue, sacrificing it and drawing a card. Matt draws for turn, and plays a mountain. He taps his dorks and lands for Thunderfoot Baloth, which is another Lieutenant card that I love. He goes to combat, putting the trigger on the Baloth this time. We then move to declare attackers, and he swings both at Trevor. This triggers the Tyrant, letting Matt target the Monastery Mentor with its ability to deal 7. With this ability on the stack, Trevor casts Swords to Plowshares and exiles the Tyrant and gets a Monk token, before sadly losing the Mentor. He then takes the full 14 from the Baloth. In his post-combat main phase, Matt casts Survival of the Fittest, and then activates it, discarding from hand a Worldspine Worm. It shuffles itself into his library first, and he gets to then go and find a creature card for hand, revealing Savage Ventmaw. At the end of turn, I use Beast Within to blow up the survival since Matt doesn't have any more green mana. I draw, and cast a Sylvan Library, and then cast Reap and Sow. I go to find a land, grabbing a Glacial Chasm, and playing it, and sacrificing a land as it comes in, and then passing to Trevor. Trevor draws and casts Elesh Norn. This, surprisingly, doesn't take out Matt's elves, mainly in part to the Baloth pumping them, and with nothing else, Trevor passes turn. Mike taps 4 mana in his main phase, one of which is red for a Ruination. He holds priority before letting his own spell resolve, and he casts a Boros Charm, making his permanents indestructible and saving his non-basics. I sadly lose my Glacial Chasm at this point, and Mike then plays an Evolving Wilds, passing. Matt taps enough for a Savage Ventmaw in his main phase, giving it the Xenagos trigger, and then swinging it at me. As he swings, he gets 3 red and 3 green, and I then take the hit. Moving to Matt's second main phase, he then drops an Aggravated Assault, and between it and the mana from the Ventmaw, Matt is basically able to have infinite combat steps, which at this point, we all agree is enough to finish out the game, and we concede to Matt. Game review time. Today's game really has me wondering about whether or not the Beast Within was the right move. So the question I put to you viewers is, should I have saved it for the Aggravated Assault, or was taking out the Survival of the Fittest, a card that I knew Matt had on the field, the right move? Both cards are incredibly powerful, but both require a lot of setup. In the case of Survival, Matt needed to have a steady stream of creatures to discard to find ones he wanted, and in the case of the Aggravated Assault, he also needed a steady stream of creatures in order to maximize his combat steps. Admittedly, as soon as he went to find the Savage Ventmaw, I probably should have expected something, and I could have used the Beast Within on the Ventmaw itself. It's points like this where I'm very curious about what people would do in this scenario, and how they would have responded differently. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta, and lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.